When I opened the courtroom door, everyone fell silent. My daughter ignored me. My son trembled, and the verdict would change our family's destiny forever. But let me tell you something. I never imagined it would come to this. Today, I'm going to tell you a story I never thought I'd share. And if you, for just a second, feel like this seems familiar, all I ask is that you hit the like button and subscribe. It'll help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Carol Miller. I'm 63 years old. And until 6 months ago, I thought I knew my life. It all started on a Tuesday afternoon, one of those gray November days in Chicago where the sky feels like it's pressing you into the pavement. I was at my station at the ShopRite in the Bridgeport neighborhood, sliding items across the scanner like I had for 21 years. The red uniform vest was tight on my shoulders, faded from so many washes that it had lost its original color. My fingers moved on autopilot. Beep, beep, beep. Each sound was another second of my life slipping away between cans of diced tomatoes and bags of rice. Across from me, a young woman was wrangling 2 kids who were screaming as if the world were ending. The toddlers hammered the shopping cart with their tiny fists, their faces red with fury. I gave her that professional smile you master after years in customer service, the one that hides the exhaustion, the back pain, the varicose veins that crawl up my legs like dark rivers. I had my earbuds in, a small rebellion against the rules that management tolerated as long as I was efficient and polite. Usually, I listened to music, some Dolly Parton or Bonnie Raitt to make the hours pass faster. But that day, instead of music, my phone played a voicemail that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my life. I'm going to find something better. Kevin's voice was clear, cold, as if he were reading from a restaurant menu. After 17 years of marriage, after sharing a bed, raising 2 children together, surviving economic downturns and illnesses, he was leaving me with a voicemail while I was at work, while I was scanning groceries for strangers who would never know that my world was collapsing 2 feet away from them. I need someone who fits with my future. I'm going to find something better. The words sliced through my earbuds like knives. He didn't even have the decency to tell me in person. He didn't even wait for me to get home. A voicemail, like someone canceling a dentist appointment. My hand froze in midair, the laser scanner still lit, searching for the barcode on a carton of milk that was now a blur before my eyes. I rewound the message. I must have heard it wrong. Surely Kevin, who could be thoughtless and selfish but never cruel, hadn't just ended our marriage while I was at work, surrounded by hurried customers and full shopping carts. But replaying it confirmed every devastating word. I listened once more, and again. Each time, the message was the same. Each time my heart broke a little more. The line behind me was growing restless. A man in an expensive suit checked his Rolex with exaggerated gestures, as if every second was more valuable than my pain. A teenager with pink hair stared at her phone, oblivious to everything. An elderly woman clutched her purse with arthritic fingers, waiting with the patience of someone who has learned that complaining doesn't speed anything up. Life went on. The world kept spinning while mine imploded in aisle 7, between the cereal and the cleaning supplies, where the industrial carpet held the stains of 1,000 invisible tragedies. Something inside my chest snapped. It wasn't a clean sound, like shattering glass. It was jagged, torn, like old wood groaning under too much weight. I had been carrying that weight for years without even realizing it. And now, the entire structure of my life was collapsing all at once. "Ma'am?" The man in the suit's voice was irritated. "Is there a problem?" I looked up at him, this stranger whose biggest concern was getting to some important meeting on time. I wanted to tell him that my husband had just dumped me via voicemail, that 17 years of marriage had been discarded in 30 seconds of audio, that I was discovering the exact moment everything I believed about my life was being revealed as a lie. Instead, I forced a weak smile and continued scanning his items. Organic vegetables that cost more than I spent on food in a week. Imported cheese that probably represented half my daily wages. Wine I could never afford, not even for a special occasion. Each beep of the scanner felt like a small death. The rest of my shift passed in a fog. I scanned, counted change, bagged groceries, and wished customers a good day while my mind replayed Kevin's message on an endless loop. I'm going to find something better. Beep. Another can of soup for another family's dinner. I need someone who fits with my future. Beep. Another bottle of wine for someone else's celebration. I'm going to find something better. Beep. Another package of ground beef for another family's barbecue. The drive home took me through the neighborhoods I had once imagined living in. Houses with manicured lawns, two-car garages, windows glowing with a warm yellow light that suggested the kind of domestic happiness I always assumed would eventually be mine. Every familiar spot along the route. The Silver Spoon Diner where Kevin and I had our first date, nervously sharing a slice of cheesecake while trying to impress each other. Lincoln Park, where we walked our dog, Buddy, on Sunday mornings, throwing a ball and pretending to be the couple who had it all figured out. Trattoria Rossi, where he proposed 10 years ago, getting down on one knee next to a table decorated with roses he had somehow arranged to have waiting for us, were now monuments to a life built on sand. Every memory felt tainted, poisoned by the knowledge that while I was treasuring these moments as proof of our love's strength, Kevin was apparently cataloging my flaws and planning his escape. How long had he been thinking of leaving? How many of our conversations had been him gathering ammunition for the eventual divorce? How many times had he looked at me and seen not the woman he promised to love forever, but an obstacle to the upgraded life he felt he deserved? Carol Ann Miller had grown up in a working-class family on the south side of Chicago that believed in the power of perseverance. My mother instilled in me the virtues of loyalty and commitment, the importance of keeping your promises no matter how difficult circumstances became. Marriage isn't about finding someone perfect, she used to say while folding laundry in our small kitchen, the smell of Tide and Downy creating an olfactory backdrop to life lessons that seemed profound at the time. It's about choosing someone and then working together to build something beautiful. I had carried those lessons into my relationship with Kevin, enduring his increasingly frequent complaints about our modest lifestyle, his cutting remarks about my appearance that always began with, "No offense, but," and ended with suggestions for improvements I couldn't afford. Kevin worked in finance, a fact he mentioned with the regularity of someone taking their own pulse. His salary significantly outpaced mine, a disparity he brought up almost daily, not with pride in his success, but with a kind of weary disappointment, as if my inability to match his income were a personal failing. Despite earning far more than I did, Kevin had never been inclined to share his financial success in ways that might improve our joint circumstances. "You have your salary," he'd say, whenever I suggested we could pool resources for a vacation. "Use that." And I did, stretching my supermarket paycheck to cover half the bills, all the groceries, and any household need that arose. The house was quiet when I arrived, but it was a different silence than the one I had known for 17 years of marriage. It wasn't the stillness of an empty home waiting to be filled with conversation and laughter. It was the void of a space that had been deliberately emptied. The door opened normally, my key turning in the lock. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew something fundamental had changed. The leather sofa we had saved up for 2 years, gone. I could see the indentations in the carpet where its feet had been. The dining set my parents gave us as a wedding gift vanished completely. The mahogany table where we'd eaten Christmas dinners and celebrated birthdays now existed only as a slightly lighter rectangle on the hardwood floor. Even the coffee table I had restored myself over a long weekend. I had spent hours sanding it down, revealing the beautiful grain beneath layers of neglect. When I applied the last coat of varnish and stepped back to admire my work, Kevin had nodded approvingly and said it looked almost professional. The walls displayed pale rectangles where photographs had hung. These ghostly frames served as an inventory of shared memories. In the bedroom, Kevin's closet yawned empty. My own clothes looked lost and lonely on their side of the shared space. The savings account, our joint account that I had naively trusted him to manage because he was better with numbers, had been drained to the last dollar. Even Buddy was gone, our golden retriever. I found his leash hanging forgotten on the hook in the kitchen, that red leash with reflective stitching, chosen specifically for our evening walks when visibility mattered for safety. I collapsed onto the living room floor, the rough carpet scraping against my palms. The house felt impossibly large around me. That night, hunger drove me to the kitchen, where I discovered the final insult: 1 egg, half a bottle of ketchup, and a single slice of stale bread. 2 days after finding my house stripped bare, when my ribs still ached from silent crying, the first call came. It was Lauren, my daughter, my princess, the little girl I nursed for 18 months because we couldn't afford formula, the same one who swore at her wedding that I would always be her priority. Mom, is it true what Dad's saying? That you asked for a divorce because you met someone else? The air left my lungs. I literally felt them cease to function. What? Lauren, your father left me with a voicemail. He emptied our bank account. He even took the dog. What are you talking about? Oh, Mom, please. Dad told us everything. That you've been acting weird for months. That you neglected the house. That you just weren't the same person. Danny and I get it, you know? You're getting older. It's normal to feel lonely. But you can't just destroy Dad like this. Each word was a rusty nail driving into my stomach. Lauren, honey, listen to me. I came home from work and the house was empty. Your father took the furniture. The account is at 0. I have 1 egg in the fridge and nothing else. Did he tell you that? Mom, stop with the drama. Dad says you always exaggerate everything. That's why he couldn't live with you anymore. Look, I'm calling because Danny and I want to ask you something. Now that you're getting a divorce, could you sign over your share of the house? Dad really needs it. He's met someone, and he wants to start his life over. You can just get a smaller apartment, right? You're on your own, after all. I sat down on the kitchen floor. My legs wouldn't hold me. Give up the house? Lauren, I paid for that house. I made 80% of the down payment with money I saved cleaning offices when you two were little. I worked double shifts for years to pay the mortgage. Mom, please, don't start with your martyr stories. The house is in Dad's name. That means it's his. And Danny and I think it's only fair that you don't make his life any harder. You've heard him enough. She hung up before I could reply. I just sat there, on the cold tile floor, holding the phone like it was a live grenade. My daughter, my baby girl, the one who cried in my arms every time she had a nightmare, the one who made me promise I would never leave her. She had just asked me to become homeless so her father could be happy with another woman. 3 days later, Danny showed up. He didn't ring the bell. He used his key. He walked in as if the house were still his too, with that sense of entitlement that doesn't require permission. Hey, Mom. I was sitting on the living room floor because there was no furniture left to sit on. I had lost 7 pounds. Not from dieting, from having nothing to eat. Danny, my voice was raspy, like I hadn't used it in days. Which was true. I came to talk to you. Lauren told me you were being difficult about the house. He stood over me, arms crossed. My son, the boy I carried to the hospital when he broke his arm falling off the swings. The one who begged me to sing him lullabies until he was 10 because he was afraid of monsters under the bed. Danny, your father abandoned me. He left me with nothing. Is that what he told you? Did he tell you he cleaned out the savings account? That he took everything we owned? Mom, that's just you exaggerating. Dad took what was his. He's entitled to it. And me? Don't I have any rights? Danny sighed, as if I were a petulant child who didn't understand how the real world worked. Mom, you've always been difficult, dramatic. Dad put up with a lot, and now he wants to be happy. Why can't you just be happy for him? I pushed myself up from the floor. My knees cracked. I was 63, and my body felt it. Be happy? Danny, I have 1 egg in my refrigerator. 1. Your father even took the food. He left me without money, without furniture, without anything. And you're asking me to be happy. So get a better job. I don't know, Mom. You're a grown woman. You can't just depend on Dad forever. The words hung in the air like poison. You can't depend on Dad. The man who, for 17 years, spent his salary on expensive suits and client dinners while I stretched mine so they could go to college. The man who never paid for a single one of his children's birthday presents with his own money. It was always me. Danny, I worked 3 jobs when your father and I got married. 3. I cleaned offices at dawn, worked at the supermarket in the afternoons, and sewed clothes on the weekends. All so you and your sister could get an education. So you would never want for anything. And now you tell me I depend on your father? Mom, that was a million years ago. Stop living in the past. Lauren and I want you to sign the papers for the house. Dad already has them drawn up. He just needs your signature. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. A thick envelope, full of legal documents he didn't even try to explain. If you don't sign, we'll have to go to court. And trust me, Mom, you won't win. The house is in Dad's name. You don't have a leg to stand on. He held out a pen. An expensive pen, the kind that costs more than my weekly wages. I looked into his eyes, those eyes that were just like mine, and for the first time in his life, I saw a stranger. I'm not signing, I said, my voice trembling but firm. What? I said I'm not signing. I paid for that house. I have the receipts. I have the bank transfers. I have witnesses. And if your father wants to take it from me, he's going to have to take me to court. Danny angrily stuffed the papers back in his jacket. Fine, Mom. Have it your way. But don't come crying to us when you lose everything. And don't count on us. You've forced us to choose between you and Dad. And we choose Dad. He slammed the door on his way out. I stood in the middle of the empty living room, holding onto the walls to keep from falling. My children had just chosen the man who destroyed me, and I had just decided I wasn't going to let them bury me alive. That night, I called Mr. Chen, the lawyer, again. Mr. Chen, I need legal help, and I need to access the money from the trust. Mrs. Miller, tell me everything, absolutely everything. And for the first time in my life, I told someone the whole truth, without shame, without excuses, without trying to protect the people who had shattered me. When I finished, the lawyer was silent for a long moment. Mrs. Miller, with all due respect, what your family has done to you is financial and emotional abuse. But I have good news. You have a legal claim to that property, and we are going to prove it. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. Small, fragile, but it was there. The following week was one of the darkest of my life. Not because things got worse, they couldn't get any worse, but because I began to see clearly things I had refused to see for years. I sat on the floor of my empty bedroom, surrounded by boxes of the few belongings Kevin hadn't bothered to take, and I started doing something I had never done before, remembering with honesty. When was the last time Kevin looked at me with affection? I spent hours trying to recall a single moment in the last 5 years where there had been tenderness in his eyes when he looked at me. I couldn't find one. When was the last time we celebrated something together without him mentioning how much it cost or how much time he'd wasted? I couldn't remember that either. When was the last time my children called just to ask how I was, without asking for something in return? That question hurt more than all the others combined. I took out my phone and scrolled through the last 2 years of text messages. Danny had written to me exactly 17 times, 17 texts in 24 months. I counted each one. 14 were to ask for money, 2 were to tell me he couldn't make it for my birthday, and 1, just 1, was to wish me a Merry Christmas. A generic message he'd probably sent to his entire contact list. Lauren had been more consistent. 42 messages. But reading them with this brutal new clarity, the illusion crumbled. 38 were requests. Mom, can you watch the kids on Saturday? Mom, I need to borrow $300. Mom, can you pick Paula up from school? I have a spa appointment. Only 4 messages in 2 years didn't ask for something. 4. I leaned back against the wall and let the tears flow freely. They weren't tears of sadness. It was something worse. It was mourning. I was mourning people who were still alive but had never been who I thought they were. I couldn't sleep that night. At 3 a.m, hungry and exhausted, I went down to the kitchen. I opened the fridge and looked at the solitary egg that had been sitting there for days. The only thing I had left to eat. I cooked it with the last drop of oil I found in the back of the cupboard. I ate it standing by the window, looking out at a sleeping Chicago. The lights from the buildings twinkled like fallen stars. I thought about my mother, how she raised me alone after my father left us, how she never complained, never made us feel like we were a burden. She had died 10 years ago, but in that moment, I missed her with an intensity that took my breath away. Mom, I whispered into the darkness, how did you do it? How did you survive this? And then I understood. My mother hadn't really survived. She had died at 68, exhausted, having never lived a single day for herself. She had given everything, absolutely everything, and left this world without ever getting a fraction of it back. I was 63, 5 years younger than my mother when she died. Was I going to repeat her story? Was I going to let them consume me until there was nothing left of Carol, only the remnants of a woman who existed solely to serve others? That thought terrified me more than being left without a home, without money, without a family. The next day, Tuesday, I had my shift at the supermarket. I arrived, as always, at 7 in the morning and put on my red vest. But something had changed. Every customer who came through my line looked different now. A woman my age bought a bottle of expensive wine, imported cheese, Belgian chocolate. She paid with a credit card without glancing at the price. When I handed her the receipt, she looked me in the eye, really looked at me, and said, "Thank you, have a good day." And she sounded like she meant it. I wondered if she had children, if they valued her, if someone was waiting for her at home with a hot meal and a hug, or if she was alone too. But at least she had imported cheese and wine to go with her solitude. Mid-morning, my supervisor, Frank, came over to my register. "Carol, can you come to the office for a minute?" My heart sank. After 21 years, I knew those words never brought good news. In the small back office, Frank avoided my gaze. He had papers in front of him. "Carol, you know we appreciate you very much. You've been a model employee for over 2 decades. But," I thought, there was always a but. "But corporate has decided to make some cuts. It's an order from up top, nothing personal. We have to let several employees go, and the criteria are, well, they're complicated." "Are you firing me?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "It's a workforce reduction. You'll receive severance, 2 months' pay." "I'm very sorry, Carol, truly. 2 months. $2,400. After 21 years of loyalty, of double shifts, of covering for sick colleagues, of working on Christmas and on my own birthday. 2 months' pay. When?" My voice was strangely calm. "Your last day is today. You can clean out your locker." I nodded. I stood up. I walked to the door. "Carol," Frank called, and there was genuine sadness in his voice. "I really am sorry." "Me too," I said, and I wasn't sure why I was apologizing. I emptied my locker. 21 years fit into one plastic bag. A chipped mug, a photo of Lauren and Danny when they were little, before they learned to see me as an ATM with feelings. An old sweater. A half-dead succulent that had miraculously survived under the fluorescent lights. I left through the back door to avoid the pitying looks from coworkers who wouldn't know what to say. The midday sun blinded me. It was a beautiful day. Ironic. I sat in my car and gripped the steering wheel with both hands. I didn't cry. I had no tears left. Instead, I took out my phone and called Mr. Chen. "Mrs. Miller, I was just about to call you. We have a date for the preliminary hearing. The judge wants to hear your case. But I need you to come to my office tomorrow to prepare your statement." "I'll be there," I said. "And Mr. Chen, there's something else I need to do." "Tell me." "I want to activate the full trust. I want access to all the money Mr. Wallace left for me." There was a pause. "Are you sure?" "Once you activate it, there's no going back. The condition was very clear. Only when you are ready to completely break from those who have betrayed you." I looked in my rearview mirror. I could see the entrance to the supermarket. 21 years of my life in there, scanning groceries, smiling at strangers, surviving. "I'm ready," I said. More than ready. That afternoon, I walked through Lincoln Park. I hadn't done that in years. I was always too tired, or I had to go shopping or clean or help Lauren with the kids. There was always something more important than me. I sat on a bench by the pond. I watched the families, young couples holding hands, old men feeding pigeons, children running with ice cream cones that melted faster than they could eat them. I had lived for 63 years, and I couldn't remember the last time I had eaten an ice cream cone. Something so simple, so human. I got up and walked to the nearest ice cream cart. "What can I get for you?" asked the vendor, an older man with a gentle southern drawl. I looked at the options. Chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, cream. "The most expensive one," I said. "I want the most expensive one you have." He charged me $5. $5 for an artisanal pistachio ice cream with almond bits. I paid without a second thought. I sat back down on the bench and took the first bite. It was delicious. And for the first time in months, I smiled. A small, timid, broken smile. But it was mine. All mine. Mr. Chen's office was in an old building on Michigan Avenue, the kind with wrought iron elevators and marble staircases that had seen a century of stories. I climbed to the 5th floor, feeling every step in my tired knees, but also feeling something new: determination. The receptionist, a young woman with stylish glasses, offered me coffee. I accepted. I hadn't had real coffee in days, only the watery stuff from the supermarket I brought in a thermos. "Mr. Chen is waiting for you, Mrs. Miller." I walked into an office lined with law books and framed diplomas. The lawyer was in his 70s, his hair completely white, but he had the bright, shrewd eyes of someone who had won many battles in court. "Mrs. Miller, please sit down." He gestured to a leather chair across from his desk. "I've been reviewing all the documentation for the trust. Mr. Wallace was very specific in his instructions." He pulled out a thick folder and opened it with almost reverential care. $4 million have been accruing interest for 11 years. The current total is $5,800,000. The numbers hung in the air. I, who had cried over $300, who had stretched $20 to eat for a week, who had mended used clothes until my fingers bled. Mr. Wallace also left this letter. He asked me to give it to you only when you activated the trust. He handed me a yellowed envelope, sealed with red wax. I opened it with trembling hands. "Dear Carol, if you are reading this, it means you have finally understood what I tried to teach you for years. You are not just a cleaner. You are not just a mother. You are not just someone's wife or someone's mother. You are Carol, and Carol deserves respect, dignity, and love. Do not ever let anyone steal that from you again. This money is not charity. It is justice. Use it to live the life you always deserved. With affection, Ernest Wallace." Tears fell onto the paper, smudging the ink. But this time, they weren't tears of pain. They were tears of gratitude for a man who had seen me when I had made myself invisible. "Mr. Chen, I need your help with something else besides the house case. Whatever you need. I want to know if I can legally sever all contact with my children. I want to change my will. And I want to protect my assets from any future claims." The lawyer looked at me with a mixture of sadness and respect. "I can help you with all of that. But I have to ask you something important. Are you absolutely sure? Family ties are complicated. Sometimes people change. Mr. Chen, my children asked me to sign away my own home so their father could be happy with another woman. They didn't ask if I had food. They didn't ask if I had a place to sleep. They told me it was my fault. That I was dramatic. That I was living in the past. I'm sure." He nodded slowly. "Then let's begin. First, we will freeze any access your husband or children might have to information about your finances. Second, we will prepare your case for the hearing. I have the receipts you sent me, the bank transfers, everything. Your case is solid, Mrs. Miller. Very solid." We spent 3 hours going over every document, every piece of evidence, every detail of the last 17 years. When we finished, the sun was setting over Chicago. "The hearing is in 2 weeks, Chen said. Until then, keep a low profile. Do not contact your family. Do not respond to any provocations. And please, take care of yourself. This is going to be emotionally draining." I left the office feeling something strange in my chest. It took me a moment to identify it. It was hope. Fragile, small, and scared. But it was there. That night I stayed at my neighbor's house, Mrs. Peterson. She was a 70-year-old widow who lived alone with 3 cats. When I explained my situation, she didn't ask questions. She just opened her door and her sofa. "My husband left me for his secretary when I was 50, she told me as she made me an omelet. I was left with nothing. I had to start from scratch. It was the best thing that ever happened to me." "The best thing?" I asked, incredulous. "Because I found out who I was without him. I found out I could be happy alone, that I didn't need someone making me feel small to feel whole." That night, lying on her sofa under a blanket that smelled of lavender, I thought about her words. Who was I without Kevin? Without my children? Without the supermarket? I didn't know. And that both terrified and thrilled me. The next morning, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, but answered. Grandma? It was my granddaughter's voice. Sophie, Lauren's daughter. She was 12. Sophie, sweetheart, how did you get my number? I had it saved. Mom doesn't know. I'm calling from my friend's phone. My heart sped up. Is everything okay? Mom and Aunt are really mad. I heard them talking about you last night. They were saying mean things, Grandma. They said you're being mean, but I know that's not true. You've never been mean to me. Tears threatened to return. Sophie, why are you calling me? Because I miss you. And because I heard Mom say that Dad lost a lot of money gambling, and that's why they need your house. And that Grandpa Kevin promised that when he divorced you, he could sell the house and help them pay the debts. The world stopped. What did you say? That Dad owes money. A lot of money. And Mom is desperate. That's why she wants you to sign the papers. It's not because of Grandpa, Grandma. It's because of the money. I closed my eyes. Of course. Of course there was something else behind it. My daughter wasn't choosing her father out of love or loyalty. She was choosing him because she needed the money from the sale of my house to save her husband from his gambling debts. Sophie, thank you for telling me this, but I don't want you to get in trouble. Don't tell anyone you called me, okay? Grandma? Yes, honey? Are you going to be okay? Because I love you, even if Mom says I shouldn't. Something broke and healed in my chest at the same time. I love you too, Sophie. Very much. And yes, I'm going to be okay. I promise. I hung up and immediately called Mr. Chen. We have new information, I told him, and it changes everything. That afternoon, Chen hired a private investigator. Within 3 days, we had proof. Lauren's husband owed over $100,000 to loan sharks and online betting sites. Kevin had promised to help them after the divorce by selling the house and keeping the money, my house, the one I had paid for, the one I had maintained. They were going to sell it to pay off gambling debts. With this information, your case is even stronger, Chen said. We can demonstrate a conspiracy to defraud you of your assets. The judge will not take this lightly. 10 days before the hearing, I received a message from Danny. Mom, Dad wants to talk to you. He says we can reach an agreement without going to court. Please be reasonable. Think of the family. I thought about replying. I thought about explaining once again everything I had done for them. But then I remembered Mr. Wallace's words. Carol deserves respect, dignity, and love. And I deleted the message without responding. That night, eating a soup Mrs. Peterson had made, I realized something. A whole week had passed without me crying. A week without feeling like the world was ending. A week of discovering that maybe, just maybe, there was life after the pain. Mrs. Peterson, I said, how did you know you were going to be okay after your husband left? She smiled, her eyes crinkling. The day I bought myself flowers. Expensive flowers. The kind he never bought me because he said it was a waste of money. I put them in a vase in my living room and I thought, these flowers are just for me. And for the first time in 30 years, I felt whole. The next day, I walked past a florist. I bought a bouquet of yellow roses. They cost $25, and they were worth every penny. 4 days before the hearing, Lauren showed up at Mrs. Peterson's house. I don't know how she knew I was there. Maybe she'd been following me. Maybe someone in the neighborhood told her. The point is, one afternoon, while I was helping Mrs. Peterson water her geraniums on the balcony, I heard the doorbell. Mom, I know you're in there. Open the door. Lauren's voice was tense, sharp. Mrs. Peterson looked at me, a question in her eyes. I nodded. It was time to face this. I opened the door. Lauren looked a mess. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes, her unwashed hair pulled back in a sloppy ponytail. She was wearing the same clothes I'd seen her in 3 days earlier in a photo she posted on Facebook. My maternal instinct wanted to ask if she was eating, if she was sleeping, but I bit my tongue. Can I come in? No, I said firmly. This isn't my house. I won't disrespect Mrs. Peterson by bringing trouble into her home. So now you're living off the charity of strangers? Mom, for God's sake, have some dignity. The word dignity coming from her mouth was like a slap. Dignity, Lauren, is the only thing I have left. because everything else was taken from me, by your father, your brother, and you. Me? I didn't take anything from you, Mom. You're the one being selfish. You're the one refusing to help your own family. Selfish? The word came out as a rough whisper. Lauren, I raised you. I worked 3 jobs so you could go to college. I paid for your wedding. I watched your children for free while you went to the gym and had coffee with your friends. And now that your husband has gambling debts, you want me to lose my house to save him? Her face went pale. Who told you that? Does it matter? It's true, isn't it? Lauren clenched her fists. For a moment, I thought she was going to hit me. Instead, her eyes filled with tears. You don't know what it's like to be married to someone with a problem. You don't know the shame, the creditors calling at all hours, the threats. I thought if we sold the house, we could start over, that I could save my marriage. And me? Where do I fit into those plans, Lauren? You? You're strong, Mom. You've always been strong. You always manage. But I can't do this alone. I have children. I have a family to support. I had a family to support too, and I did it. Alone, without asking my mother to lose her house. It's different. Why? Because you matter more than I do? Because your pain is worth more than mine? Lauren wiped her tears away angrily. Dad was right. You're impossible. Everything has to be a drama with you. Everything has to be about how much you've suffered, how much you've given. You know what, Mom? I'm tired. I'm tired of your sacrifices. I'm tired of you making me feel guilty for having a life. I never asked you to feel guilty for having a life, Lauren. I just asked you to see me, to treat me like a human being, not an ATM. You know what the worst part is? Her voice had turned venomous. Sophie asks about you. She misses you, and I have to explain to her that her grandmother is being selfish, that she's breaking up the family over pride. She mentioned Sophie, my sweet Sophie, and something in me hardened like steel. Don't you dare use your daughter as a weapon against me, Lauren. If Sophie misses me, it's because she knows I love her. For real. Unconditionally. Without expecting anything in return. Something you never learned how to do. You're a witch, she spat the words. A bitter witch who can't stand to see anyone else happy. No, Lauren. I'm a woman who finally learned not to let people walk all over her. And if that makes me a witch, then yes, I'm a witch. She turned to leave but stopped. In court, I'm going to testify. I'm going to tell them how you've always been manipulative, how you always used emotional blackmail to control us. Dad and Danny are going to testify too. When the judge hears everything, he'll understand what kind of person you really are. Go ahead, I said with a calm I didn't know I possessed. Say whatever you want. The truth has a funny way of coming out. Lauren stormed down the stairs. I stayed in the doorway, trembling, until I felt Mrs. Peterson's hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing, she said softly. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you did the right thing. I didn't sleep that night. I tossed and turned on the sofa, replaying every word of the conversation. The most painful part wasn't Lauren's anger. It was her complete inability to see my humanity. To her, I was still just Mom, just the person who was supposed to give, sacrifice, and disappear when needed. 2 days before the hearing, Danny sent me a long text. I read it 3 times, searching for any trace of remorse, any sign that my son still existed somewhere beneath the person he had become. Mom, I know you're angry. I get that you feel hurt, but this has gone too far. Lauren is suffering. Her marriage is in crisis. Dad just wants to move on with his life. Why do you have to make everything so complicated? The house is just a house. You can get a small apartment. You don't need that much space. But for us, that sale would change everything. We could pay off debts. Start over. Isn't that what you always taught us? That family helps each other? Please reconsider. Don't go to that trial. Sign the papers. Do the right thing. If you ever loved us, prove it now. Danny. I read the message until the words lost their meaning. If you ever loved us, prove it now. As if 20 years of waking up at 4 a.m. to clean offices wasn't proof enough. As if the sleepless nights when they were sick didn't count. As if every dollar I ever earned and spent on them was invisible. I didn't reply. Instead, I wrote something I never thought I would write. A letter. Not to them. To myself. Dear Carol, you spent 63 years believing your worth depended on how much you could give, how much you could sacrifice, how much pain you could endure in silence. But you were wrong. Your worth doesn't depend on how useful you are to others. Your worth exists simply because you exist, because you breathe, because you feel, because you deserve to take up space in this world without constantly having to earn it. From this day forward, you are going to live for you. You will make choices that protect you, even if others call you selfish. You will say no, even if they call you cruel. You will prioritize your peace, even if they accuse you of not loving your family. Because loving others was never supposed to mean destroying yourself. And if it took you 63 years to learn that, it doesn't matter. You still have time. You can still live. With love, Carol. I put the letter in my purse. I would read it every time I doubted myself, every time guilt threatened to drag me back. The night before the hearing, Mrs. Peterson insisted we have a proper dinner. She made lasagna, the real kind that takes hours. She set the table with her best tablecloth. She lit candles. "Tomorrow your new life begins," she said, pouring me wine. "No matter what happens in that courthouse, tomorrow you start living free." "I'm scared," I admitted. Scared to see them, scared of what they'll say, scared of losing them forever. "My dear," Mrs. Peterson took my hand in her warm, wrinkled ones. "You've already lost them. What you're doing tomorrow is simply acknowledging it. And it's okay to be scared. Fear means you're doing something brave." That night I dreamed of my mother. She was young, like in the old photos, with her flowered dress and her tired smile. She was hugging me and saying, "Honey, do what I never could. Live." I woke up with tears on my cheeks, but with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. I put on my best dress, a navy blue one I had bought years ago for Danny's wedding and had never worn again. I did my makeup carefully. I fixed my hair. I looked in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was no longer the exhausted supermarket cashier. She was no longer the invisible wife. She was no longer the mother who had erased herself. She was Carol. Just Carol. And Carol was ready to fight. The Daily Center was a modern building of glass and concrete that stood in stark contrast to the older buildings around it. I arrived 30 minutes early. Mr. Chen was already waiting for me at the entrance, with his worn leather briefcase and a serious but confident expression. "Good morning, Carol. Are you ready?" "No," I answered honestly, "but I'm going to do it anyway." He smiled faintly. "That's the best attitude. Remember, stay calm. Answer only what you're asked. Don't let them provoke you. Your truth is powerful enough without needing to be shouted." We rode up a silent elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallways smelled of old paper and institutional coffee. Other people waited on wooden benches, some crying, others with the stony faces of those who no longer felt anything. I wondered how many family tragedies were settled within these walls every day. We sat on a bench across from the hearing room. My hands were trembling slightly. Chen reviewed documents, murmuring numbers and dates. I could only stare at the closed door and wonder what was on the other side. At 5 minutes to 10, I saw them arrive. First Kevin, in a new suit that probably cost more than my salary for 3 months. He walked with the arrogant confidence of someone who believes he's already won. At his side was a young woman, thin, blonde, in a tight dress and impossible heels. She looked about 35, less than half his age. She was laughing at something he said, touching his arm with familiarity. So that was something better. A younger, thinner, blonder version of what I once was. Behind them were Lauren and Danny. My daughter wore a black pantsuit, her hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. Danny was dressed casually but expensively, with the studied carelessness of someone trying to look relaxed. Neither of them looked at me. And then, to my shock, I saw Sophie, my granddaughter, in her school uniform, her backpack clutched in her hands, her 12 years of innocence on display. She walked behind her mother, her eyes red as if she had been crying. Lauren had brought her daughter to the hearing. She had brought a 12-year-old child to witness her grandmother's destruction. Something cold and hard settled in my chest. Kevin finally saw me. His eyes scanned me from head to toe with an expression I couldn't interpret. Surprise? Disdain? Indifference? He leaned toward his lawyer, a young man with glasses and nervous mannerisms, and whispered something. The lawyer glanced at me and nodded. Lauren kept her eyes fixed straight ahead, as if I didn't exist. Danny shoved his hands in his pockets and studied the floor with exaggerated fascination. Only Sophie looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw something that broke my heart. A silent apology. Courtroom 3, Miller versus Miller. Parties may enter. The bailiff's voice broke the frozen moment. Chen touched my elbow gently. Let's go. Remember, the truth is on your side. When I opened the courtroom door, everyone fell silent. The quiet was so complete, so absolute, I could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. My daughter ignored me, deliberately turning her head toward the window. My son trembled, barely perceptibly, as if my physical presence confronted him with something he'd rather not see. And I understood then that this verdict, no matter what the judge said, had already changed this family's destiny, because nothing would ever be the same. Ever. The room was small, functional, a long bench for the judge, who had not yet arrived, 2 tables facing each other for the opposing parties, wooden benches for the public, where Sophie sat alone, hugging her backpack like a life raft. We sat down, me on the left with Chen, them on the right, Kevin, his young lawyer, and behind them, Lauren and Danny as witnesses. The blonde woman had disappeared, probably waiting outside. It would be in poor taste, after all, to bring your new mistress to your divorce hearing. All rise, the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Peterson presiding. The judge was a woman in her 50s, with graying temples and an expression of professional weariness. She sat, opened the file, and looked at us over her reading glasses. All right. We are here for the preliminary hearing in the matter of the division of assets between Carol Ann Miller and Kevin John Miller. Her voice was neutral, almost bored, as if this were the 10th identical case she'd seen this week. Before we hear testimony, does either party wish to propose an out-of-court settlement? Kevin's lawyer shot to his feet. Yes, Your Honor. My client is prepared to offer Mrs. Miller a sum of $30,000 in exchange for her relinquishing any and all claims to the marital home and signing an uncontested divorce without request for alimony. $30,000. For a house worth $250,000. For 17 years of marriage. For my dignity. Chen looked at me, waiting for my reaction. I leaned toward him and whispered, No. He stood up. My client rejects the offer, Your Honor. We are here to prove that the property in question was acquired primarily with funds contributed by her, and that Mr. Miller has acted in bad faith by emptying joint accounts and appropriating marital assets without consent. The judge nodded, showing neither surprise nor particular interest. Understood. We will proceed to hear from the parties. Mrs. Miller, you may begin. I stood on shaky legs. I felt the weight of every gaze, especially Sophie's, who was watching me with tears silently streaming down her cheeks. Your Honor, My voice was weak, broken. I took a deep breath and tried again. Your Honor, I bought that house with the savings from 20 years of work. Work! I started after my first husband died, and I was left alone with 2 small children. Do you have proof of these payments? The judge interrupted. Chen stood and handed the clerk a thick folder. Here are all the wire transfer receipts, Your Honor. $200,000 deposited by Mrs. Miller for the down payment on the home. Mr. Miller contributed $50,000. The mortgage was paid for years with funds from both, but at a 70-30 ratio, with her covering the larger share. The judge reviewed the documents in silence. I could see her brow furrow slightly. Why then is the deed in Mr. Miller's name alone? Because... I swallowed hard. Because he convinced me it was better that way. For tax purposes, he said. That it would protect me in case of legal trouble with his business. I trusted him. And the joint accounts your counsel mentioned? Chen submitted more documents. Mr. Miller emptied a joint savings account 3 days before abandoning the marital home. $42,000 that were the savings of both parties. That's a lie. Kevin's voice cut through the air like a knife. That money was mine. From my work bonuses. She barely contributed anything. The judge glared at him. Mr. Miller, you will have your turn to speak. Sit down. Kevin sat, but I could see the anger in his clenched jaw. Continue, Mrs. Miller. He also took all the furniture. The pieces we bought together. The ones my parents gave me at my previous wedding. He even took our dog. The dog was mine, Kevin muttered, and his lawyer put a hand on his arm to silence him. Anything else you wish to add? The judge asked. I looked at Lauren and Danny. They kept their eyes fixed on the table, as if studying the wood grain were the most important task of their lives. Yes, Your Honor. I want it on the record that my children have repeatedly pressured me to sign away my rights to this property. Not out of love for their father, not out of a sense of justice, but because my daughter's husband has gambling debts and they need the money from the sale to pay them off. Lauren shot to her feet. That is a lie. A vicious lie. The judge banged her gavel. Order. Ma'am, sit down or I will have you removed. We have proof, Your Honor, Chen said, handing over another envelope. Reports from a private investigator documenting the debts of Mr. Matt Cooper, husband of Lauren Miller. Over $100,000 owed to loan sharks and online betting sites. The silence that followed was deafening. The judge reviewed the documents, her expression growing more and more serious. This is highly irregular. Mr. Miller, were you aware of these debts when you offered to assist your daughter with the funds from the sale of the home? Kevin didn't answer. His lawyer was whispering furiously in his ear. Answer the question, Mr. Miller. I wanted to help my daughter. There's nothing wrong with that. Using assets that are not legally in their entirety. Yours? The judge closed the folder with a sharp snap. We're going to take a 30-minute recess. I want to speak with both attorneys in my chambers. Now. She stood and swept out through a side door. The lawyers followed, and we were left there, in that terrible silence where families break and the truth finally comes out. The 30 minutes felt like 30 hours. No one spoke. No one moved. Kevin stared at his phone, his hands tense. Lauren cried silently, wiping her tears away with anger. Danny left the courtroom without a word. I just sat there, my hands clasped in my lap, feeling the weight of years of silence finally broken. Mr. Chen had gone with the other lawyers, leaving me alone on my side of the room. Then Sophie stood up from her bench. She walked toward me with slow, hesitant steps. Lauren's head snapped up. Sophie, get back here right now. My granddaughter ignored her. She sat in the chair next to mine and took my hand. Her small, warm fingers wrapped around mine. I'm sorry, Grandma, she whispered. I'm so sorry for all of this. It's not your fault, sweetheart, I said, squeezing her hand. None of this is your fault. Sophie! Lauren's voice was hysterical. I told you to come back here. No, Mom. I'm staying with Grandma. If you don't come here right now, I swear I will. What? Sophie turned to look at her mother, and there was something new in her voice. Something that both broke my heart and filled me with pride. Are you going to ground me for loving my grandmother? For not wanting to be like you? Lauren went pale. You don't know what you're saying. You're a child. I know that Grandma always treated me with love, that she never asked for anything in return, that when I was sick, she was the one who came to take care of me, not you. And I know that you only call her when you need something. I've seen it my whole life, Mom. I'm not stupid. Sophie, please. Lauren's voice broke. Don't do this. Not here. Then where, Mom? At home. Where Dad yells and breaks things when he loses money? Where you cry in the bathroom and pretend everything is fine? I'm tired of pretending. Kevin finally spoke, his voice laced with venom. Carol, look what you've done. You're poisoning the girl against her own mother. You were always manipulative. Something inside me snapped. Not with sadness, with fury. A clean, clear, righteous fury. Manipulative? My voice echoed in the small courtroom. Kevin, you drained our accounts. You took everything. You planned to sell my house to help your daughter pay off her husband's gambling debts. And I'm the manipulative one. That house isn't yours. It's in my name. Because you convinced me it was for the best. Because I trusted you. Because I believed that marriage was forever. How stupid I was. Yeah, he said with a cruel smirk. You were stupid. Lauren stood up, pointing a finger at me. This is your fault. All of it. If you had just signed the papers, if you hadn't been so proud, if you had thought about your family instead of yourself. I always thought about my family. I cut her off, my voice trembling but firm. Every single day of my life I thought about you. Every decision I made was for you. I completely forgot about myself, and when I finally decided I deserved some dignity, you called me selfish. Because you are, Lauren screamed. You're destroying our family. No, Lauren. This family was destroyed years ago, when you all stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a resource. When my value depended on how much I could give you, I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending the ruins were a home. The side door opened. The judge returned, followed by the lawyers. Everyone fell silent and returned to their seats. Sophie squeezed my hand tighter and didn't let go. The judge sat, adjusted her glasses, and looked at us with an expression she hadn't had before. It was something like disappointment, or perhaps disgust. I have reviewed all the documentation. I have listened to both parties, and I must say, this is one of the clearest cases of misappropriation of marital assets I have seen in years. Kevin tensed. Mr. Miller, the evidence proves beyond a reasonable doubt that the majority of the capital invested in the home came from Mrs. Miller. The fact that the deed is in your name does not eliminate her right to the property, especially considering her funds made its purchase possible. But, Your Honor, Kevin's lawyer began, I'm not finished. Furthermore, the draining of joint accounts without notification or consent constitutes conversion of assets. And what's worse, I have evidence that there was a plan to sell the property and use the funds not for mutual benefit, but to cancel the debts of a third party. Lauren sobbed audibly. Therefore, my ruling is as follows. The property located in Bridgeport will be transferred in its entirety to the name of Carol Ann Miller, who will be required to compensate Mr. Miller in the sum of $50,000, equivalent to his documented initial contribution. That's unfair, Kevin shot to his feet. That house is worth much more. Sit down, Mr. Miller, or I will have you removed. The current market value of the property is irrelevant. You contributed $50,000. You will receive $50,000. The appreciation in value belongs to the party who maintained and cared for the property over the years, which, according to all evidence, was Mrs. Miller. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am ordering Mr. Miller to return the $42,000 from the joint savings account within 60 days, plus interest. And the furniture? Mr. Chen asked. The personal property removed from the home without consent must be returned or financially compensated for, based on an appraisal. That includes the family pet, if Mrs. Miller so desires. I looked at Kevin. His face was red, his hands clenched into fists. Beside him, Lauren was crying without trying to hide it. Danny had returned and was pale as wax. Do you have anything to add, Mrs. Miller? The judge asked. I stood up slowly. Sophie let go of my hand carefully. Yes, Your Honor. I want it on the record that I do not wish to maintain any relationship with Mr. Miller beyond what is strictly necessary to comply with this court's order. And I request a restraining order should he attempt to contact or intimidate me in any way. Granted. Anything else? I looked at my children. Lauren met my gaze with pure hatred. Danny couldn't look me in the eye. No, Your Honor. That's all. Very well. This hearing is concluded. The final documents will be ready in 2 weeks. You are dismissed. The bang of the gavel echoed like a final clap of thunder. Kevin stormed out of the room, shoving the door so hard it bounced back against the wall. His lawyer scrambled after him, trying to calm him down. Lauren lingered for a moment, looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Rage? Pain? Regret? I hope you're happy, she said, her voice icy. You just destroyed your family. No, Lauren. Your father destroyed it when he left me a voicemail. You destroyed it when you asked me to become homeless. I just refused to be buried in the ruins. You're a selfish, cruel woman, and someday you're going to die alone and you will regret this. Maybe, I admitted. But I'd rather die alone with my dignity than live surrounded by people who treat me like dirt. Lauren grabbed Sophie's arm. Let's go, now. Mom, you're hurting me. I said now, Sophie. My granddaughter looked at me one last time as her mother dragged her toward the exit. In her eyes, I saw a silent promise. I'll be back. And in mine, she must have seen another. I'll be waiting. Danny was the last to leave. He stopped at the door, turned his head as if he were about to say something. But in the end, he just shook his head and left. I was alone with Mr. Chen in the empty courtroom. My legs gave out and I had to sit down again. You did very well, Carol. Very well. I don't feel well. I feel empty. That's normal. You just won a very important battle. But victories can hurt too. Do they always hurt like this? Only the ones that are worth it. We left the Daily Center into a bright Chicago morning. The sun blinded me for a moment. On the street, life went on. People hurried past. Buses rumbled by. Street vendors called out their wares. The world hadn't stopped for my personal tragedy. It never does. Mr. Chen walked me to the L station. "What will you do now?" he asked. I thought about the empty house that was now legally mine. I thought about the trust fund waiting for me in the bank. I thought about Mrs. Peterson and her geraniums. I thought about Sophie and her small hand holding mine. "I'm going to live," I said finally. For the first time in 63 years, I'm going to live. 3 months after the trial, I moved back into my house. But it wasn't the same house Kevin had emptied. It was something completely new. With part of the trust money, I hired a designer. A young woman named Patricia who asked me something no one had asked me in decades. "What makes you happy, Carol? What colors do you like? How do you want to feel in your own home?" I didn't know how to answer at first. I had spent my entire adult life decorating spaces for others, choosing colors Kevin would like, buying furniture to impress guests, creating a home that served everyone but me. "I don't know," I admitted. "I've never asked myself." Patricia smiled. "Then let's find out together." We spent weeks visiting shops, looking through magazines, testing paint samples on the walls. And slowly, Carol emerged. The Carol who had been buried under years of sacrifice and self-neglect. It turned out I liked warm colors. Soft yellows, muted oranges, greens that reminded me of gardens in spring. It turned out I didn't like the ostentatious furniture Kevin had chosen. I preferred things that were simple, comfortable, cozy. I painted the walls. I bought a huge, soft sofa where I could curl up with a book. I filled the house with plants. So many plants that Patricia joked I was creating an urban jungle. I hung pictures that made me smile, not ones that impressed guests who never came. And I adopted a dog. Not a golden retriever like Buddy. This time I chose a mixed breed from the shelter, an impossible mutt with one cloudy eye and 3 legs. I named her Liberty, Libby, for short. Libby followed me all over the house, hopping happily on her 3 legs as if she didn't know one was missing, as if loss didn't define her capacity for joy. I learned a lot from that dog. Mrs. Peterson came over for coffee every afternoon. We'd sit on my newly decorated balcony, overlooking the rooftops of Bridgeport, and talk about everything and nothing. She told me stories of her youth, and I told her about my plans for the future, because now I had plans. For the first time in my life, I had plans that didn't involve anyone but me. I signed up for a painting class. I'd always loved art, but never had the time. Now, I had all the time in the world. I discovered I wasn't very good, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the pleasure of mixing colors, of seeing something created by my own hands that served no practical purpose. Art for art's sake. I also started to travel. Small trips at first. A weekend in the Berkshires, 4 days in New Orleans, a week in coastal Maine, eating lobster and walking along the shore. In each place, I ate in restaurants without looking at the prices. I bought ridiculous souvenirs that made me happy. I took pictures of myself smiling, alone, not needing anyone else in the frame for the image to have value. Kevin paid the money the judge ordered, the $50,000 from his initial contribution and the $42,000 from the joint account. He was late, forcing Mr. Chen to threaten further legal action. But eventually, he paid. He didn't return the furniture. Instead, the court forced him to provide financial compensation. I used that money to furnish my new home, every piece chosen by me, for me. I heard nothing from Lauren and Danny during those first few months. I blocked their numbers. I blocked their social media. I needed that silence to heal. But Sophie found a way to reach me. She would text me from her best friend's phone. Short messages at first. "I miss you, Grandma. How is Libby? Can I visit you someday?" I spoke with Mr. Chen about it. He explained that legally, as a minor, she'd need Lauren's permission to visit. And Lauren, as I heard through the grapevine, had forbidden any contact. But Mr. Chen added with a sly smile. When she turns 14, a minor's preference is given significant weight in family court. It would be very difficult for Lauren to legally prevent it. So I waited. And while I waited, I lived. 6 months after the trial, on a perfect spring afternoon, I was on my balcony painting a vase of flowers when the doorbell rang. Libby ran to the door, yapping her sharp, silly bark. I opened it without looking through the peephole. A mistake I wouldn't make anymore. It was Danny. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes. His hair was a mess. His clothes were wrinkled. "Hey, Mom." We stood there, looking at each other in silence. Part of me wanted to slam the door in his face. But another part, that motherly part that never completely disappears no matter how much they hurt you, wanted to hug him and ask what was wrong. "What do you want, Danny?" "I need to talk to you, please." "We have nothing to talk about." "Mom, please, just 5 minutes. After that, if you want, I'll leave and never come back." Against my better judgment, I let him in. He sat on the edge of my new sofa, looking around at the transformed house with surprised eyes. It's really different. Nice. Thank you." Libby sniffed him suspiciously, then sat at my feet like a guardian. "Mom, I came to apologize." The words hung in the air. I said nothing. I just waited. I was wrong. We were wrong. Lauren and me. Dad lied to us about a lot of things. He made us believe you were the problem, that you were selfish, difficult. And we believed him because it was easier than accepting he was the villain. Go on? After the trial, everything fell apart. Dad moved in with that woman, Christine. The relationship lasted 3 months. She left him when she realized he didn't have as much money as he pretended. Lauren is still with Matt, but things are really bad. The debts are just getting bigger. They're thinking about filing for bankruptcy. And you came to ask me for money? "No," he said quickly. "No, Mom. I didn't come to ask for anything. I just came to tell you I'm sorry, that you were right about everything, that we treated you like garbage when you were the only good thing in our lives." I felt something shift in my chest. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was something. "Danny, do you know how many times in these past months I've thought about you two? How many times I wanted to call? How many times I cried for my children?" He nodded, tears in his eyes. "But I also know that if I forgive you now, if I open that door, we'll fall back into the same pattern. Me giving, you taking, me sacrificing, you taking advantage. No, Mom. I swear." "You can't swear anything, Danny, because you haven't changed yet. You came here full of regret, yes. But how much of that regret is genuine, and how much is because your life fell apart? If things got better for you tomorrow, would you still be here? Would you still value me?" He didn't know what to say. "I need you to understand something," I continued. "I love you both. I will always love you. But loving you doesn't mean I have to accept being walked all over. Love isn't supposed to hurt. And for too many years, your love hurt me. So, is there no way to fix this? I don't know, Danny. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe with time. Maybe with therapy. Maybe never. But what I do know is that I'm no longer going to live my life begging for crumbs of affection from my own children." He stood up, wiping his eyes. "I understand. And I respect that. But Mom, I want you to know that I'm going to work on myself. I'm going to go to therapy. I'm going to try to be the son you deserved. And if someday, at some point, you decide to give me another chance, I promise it will be worth it." I walked him to the door. Before he left, he turned. "Sophie misses you so much. She talks about you all the time. Lauren won't let her contact you, but as soon as she turns 14... "I know," I said softly. "I'll be waiting for her." When he was gone, I sat on my sofa with Libby in my lap. I didn't cry. I had no more tears for that old life. Instead, I felt peace. 2 weeks later, on my 64th birthday, I was on my balcony watching the sunset when my phone rang. An unknown number. "Grandma? Sophie? I turned 14 last week. Mom says I can't see you, but I looked it up and legally I can. Can I come over? Please?" I smiled through tears. "You can come over whenever you want, my love. The doors to this house will always be open for you." Today, as I write this sitting on my balcony, With Libby snoring at my feet and a cup of hot tea in my hands, I wonder, have you lived through something like this? Or do you know someone who's going through it right now? If so, leave me your answer in the comments. Because these stories need to be told. They need to be heard. And if this story moved you, I ask that you like it and subscribe to the channel. Because maybe someone else out there needs to hear that it's okay to choose yourself, that it's okay to say no, that it's okay to live, that it's never too late to be reborn.